Hey guys, and welcome back to the HobbyNut 007 channel. Everything on our show rod is primed and in the dehydrator, base coat on the fenders and some of it. But while that's drying, I want to go ahead and get a little jump on our Saturday night short track group build, 1971 Mustang. If you remember, we're doing this one. So we're going to be going ahead and cleaning up a few things, and I'll share with you here in a second where we're starting and where we're going. Stick around. Okay guys, before we get into it, let me kind of go over what we're going to be doing. If you recall, let me start with the hood. Little rough along the edges here, and we're going to be making a lot of alterations to this hood, by the way. So we're going to be sanding. You see where I've got that marked, a couple of spots here. On the bottom side, we've got some injection pin marks, and you see where there was a cutout for it. Well, I've got some 7mm rod, and we're just going to be cutting and filling that in, and then we'll put a little putty on that too, and then we'll sand that, get it nice and smooth. We'll be smoothing all this out. Of course, we'll be removing these mounting pins. And the other alteration to the hood is, if you notice in this picture how the hood is sloped over, well, the whole front end is, and I'll show you how we're going to do that on the body too, but that's going to have to be kind of bent over a little bit more, and we're going to have to make a couple of cuts right about here to raise kind of like a cowl kind of for the hood there, as you see from this side shot, how it's kind of raised there. So that's what we're going to be doing to the hood. We're going to have to do a bit of work in there, but no big deal. Now on the body, you see where I have all these Sharpie marks. This is stuff, not the injection, but the mold marks, mold lines here. Excuse me, off camera there. And we'll be taking out these door handles and the marker lights. I've got a basic mock-up to how high the fenders are going to need to be cut out, but we'll get to that later. The entire grill is going to have to be removed, and again, all the these mold lines, the seam marks there, are going to have to be removed. We'll be opening the trunk as well, and then I'll show you how we're going to be bringing that nose down a little bit more, starting right about here. If you remember the video on how the no heat fender fix for the Polar Lights 69 Talladega, how we did that, well, it's going to be similar to how we're going to modify this, starting right about here. And we'll be using our dial caliper, and if you've got a ruler, you could do that to mark it evenly on both sides, so that droop is going to be just the same. And you see we've got it marked here as far as how high the wheel wells need to be cut out. So that's the plan. I think that's it at the moment. But as we go along, I'll be showing you that too. So I'm going to go ahead, get over to the sink, and start sanding and getting all these mold lines sanded off, and then we'll take a look at where we're going from there. So hang around. We have our mold lines removed from the body here. Both sides. We've also got our marker lights and door handles filled in. There was one spot on the body that I found when I was sanding, and that is right back here on the back of the deck lid. You see that center little spot there? There was a sink mark on the outside from this little pin right here, and I've snipped that off, and when we remove the trunk, we'll remove all of these injection pin marks as well as that. But we've got all of that kind of smoothed out. And you notice the bare plastic on the roof. I'm going to be hitting that with 1500 or 2000, giving a good smooth finish for the primer to bite into. I usually block sand, and what I did with these to make sure we got a nice smooth, you don't want to feel where the door handle was or the marker lights. I use this foam block that I got years ago. I think it was in a Millennium 2000 polishing kit. But it's just a kind of stiff foam block, and you wrap your sandpaper around it, and then you can block sand and make sure everything's nice and smooth. And you see here down the side, what you're looking for when you're doing this is any little dips and waves. And I did have some right up here at the front that had some kind of gloss look still showing through. So we put some putty up there and then block that back off again too. Smooth it out. And the biggest reason you would do that is gloss paint jobs, especially gloss black, if there are any ripples in the paint anywhere or in the body anywhere, that's going to show up. I think high gloss black is one of my favorite colors, but it also shows everything, every little dust, speck, scratch, ding, dent. It really magnifies it. So we've got this much done. The next thing we're going to be doing to the body is going to be drooping this front end. If you remember from the picture here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to be bringing that front end down, and we'll be getting on that in just a few minutes. Then the next thing is going to be to open these wheel wells up. Give it that good Saturday night short track look. But the look of the real car. I did go ahead, as I mentioned, and leave the grill in for the moment, as well as leave the deck lid on when I hadn't cut that off yet. I want the body to be a little stiff while we're cutting this out. I don't want to remove that and make it a little flimsy. So we'll do that after the wheel wells are cut out. The other thing I did was went back with the Tamiya scribing tool and went ahead and rescribed all the door lines as well as the deck lid. We want those to be, especially the door lines, to be visible as they are on the real car. And again, the trunk we're going to be cutting open. So we'll get to that. A few other things. The hood, you can see where we fill that in. We talked about using that 7mm rod, and we got that moved or put in and sanded nice and smooth under there. Remove the injection pin marks here and here. There's still just a trace of one right there. I thought I got out, but we'll sand this front again nice and even. And the hood is going to require a lot of work, because not only is it going to have to bend to that droop in the front end. I mean, naturally it's got a good little slope there, but it needs to be a little bit more. And as you see in this picture of the cowl on the hood, we're going to have to be scratch building that. And I don't know, I may talk to my son-in-law, may see about 3D printing that. But there's going to be a little bit of work going into the hood, and that's okay. That's okay. That's part of the fun of doing this, guys. Other thing is, I went ahead and broke a few things out of this kit that were the race car parts. For example, the dash, I went ahead and cut the gauges off and smoothed that out. We'll be using photo etch if we use this. I like to get a bunch of stuff out and set aside just in case. Other body parts that we did was we took this back panel that of course goes right back in here, and there was a kind of honeycomb pattern that was on the back of this, and then a chrome piece that sat over that with the tail lights and all that. Well, in lieu of using that, we've sanded all of that off because it was just a smooth back panel on this car. Now down here, you see where the exhaust pipes are. We're going to take a little bit more, shave a little bit more of that off until those are gone, because you are going to be able to see the fuel cell and some bracing back here, or kind of like a roll cage around the bottom of the fuel cell. So, but this is pretty much done. On the inside, since the trunk's going to be open, you see the injection pin marks that were here. We went ahead and got those filled in and sanded, so those look pretty good. Some of this is going to be trimmed away once the trunk is open. I broke out the firewall. I'm not going to be using this, but the reason I did was I wanted this shape right here. So we've got a clean bulkhead here, even though the real car had the sump tank kind of over to this side, but I wanted that good, nice fit up against the fenders there. So we'll be using this as kind of a template. And in that the trunk's going to be open, we took that rear bulkhead, smoothed it out back through here a little bit, and brought it down just a little bit. This little notch up here is for the window. Not sure we're going to need this back portion, so we're going to see how it looks when the trunk's open, and we'll go from there. The rear bumper, we went ahead and de-chromed. It was pretty rough with some flash, so we've got that de-chromed and sanded back down a little bit, got it smoothed out. A little more sanding, as you can see on the top of it, that we need to do to smooth that totally out. The front bumper, there we go. Front bumper is going to seat there, and then we'll have that little, I'm going to call it a push bar, sitting up there as you see here. And we'll be rechroming or doing that as well. Hold on, guys. Camera's telling me my battery's going out again. I think I might have to replace the battery. So we're going to get set up real quick, and we're going to go ahead and make our notch to drop that front end. I want to get that done before we open the wheel wells. And before we get on to that, one other thing, the Southern Stalker or Super Stalker chassis. If you've never paid any attention to this is not a bad chassis. There's a few things I want to make some modifications on. This is just stuck on there right now. This chassis had a leaf spring suspension, which is not what we're running. I'm going to use this pan as the basic, but there are a lot of modifications I'm going to be making to this. Going to remove these X bars here, and we're going to be adding trailing arms to this, but I do like the basic part of the chassis. This is going to require a lot of modifications. I'm not sure I'm going to use this part quite yet. I'm swaying toward it because I like the general shape of it and the stance it's going to give, but it is going to have to be changed quite a bit. All of this for the fuel cell is going to have to be removed. The stock kit, this is where the battery sat, and then this was the fuel cell. Well, I'll be cutting all of this away. And well, you know, I'm saying that, guys, but I'm really swaying toward scratch building a back piece too. But there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. This is pretty much the design I'm looking for. So I'll probably cut this away before I make that decision. Test fit the photo etch or the resin fuel cell. We're just going to have to see. But I think it looks pretty good. And by the way, these Mustangs, 71 Mustang was a 109-inch wheelbase, and we have that measured already on this chassis. If we used it just like that, the Super Stalker GTO chassis says to set it right here, which would be, when I measure that in scale inches, is about 112-inch wheelbase. This needs to be 109, and when I move this all the way forward, it measured to be, the wheelbase would measure to be about 108, but it was right about 108 and a half. So it's going to be really, really close. So that's kind of where I was going to go with this, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay, guys. All right. Time to create that little droop in the fender there. So let me get set up, and I'll be right back. Okay, so how do we determine where our cut needs to be to droop that front end? Well, by looking at the pictures, you would think that it was right dead center of the fender well here, but that's actually not the case. As I studied the pictures of the hood as well as the fenders, it's a little bit forward. So what I did was I looked on the hood, and it's about, let me get my pointer here, right about here is where the hood starts to droop. So I measured back with the dial caliper 25 millimeters from the tip coming back, and you see where that goes to from the very edge there. So that's about where we wanted to make our cut. So the first thing I did was measure from the door jamb to the front of the fender and make sure that both fenders, since I'd squared these off and evened them up a little bit, I wanted to make sure the fenders were the same length. So we went from the door jamb to the tip of the fender, and then I verified that with our Murphy's rule, And once I did, and I knew everything was even on both sides, I measured off that 25 millimeters from the slope there. I laid this right against it, and then you see where I made the mark. My mechanical pencil, I can't figure out where on the desk it is, such a mess. So I just used a fine point Sharpie, and you see there's my line. And then we just flipped it around the other side, did the same thing, butted that right up against the edge, and you see there's our, well, there it is, and you see our mark in there. So but I'm one, before I make a cut, I'm going to make sure it's right. So after we did that, I went from, with the Murphy's rule again, from the center of our mark to the tip on both sides. It was the same. And then we went back to this door jamb and measured from the door jamb to the mark and made sure that it was exactly the same. So we know that our mark is in the right place, and that way the fenders, you don't want these things, one side to be drooped more than the other, it to be kind of cattywampus. And I know it looks like an odd angle to be cutting at, but trust me, I think when you see this, especially when the wheel wells are opened up, you'll see what I mean. But and again, the picture might look like it was drooped from dead center. This is going to give you that same effect, even though it's not drooped right there. So let's get the saw and start cutting. Okay guys, so now we are going to get some sandpaper, get in this groove here, clean that up just a little bit, and we'll come back. Okay guys, so we've got our cut made there, as you can see, and all we did from there was take some 400 grit sandpaper, doubled it up, and I put it all the way up in there like this, and I pulled it through about 5 times on each side, give us a good smooth look. And if you remember from the Talladega, how we did that, it was a single cut, and that's what we're going to do here, and it's going to give that same in fact, check this out, just that small a cut, and look how much movement, how much droop this is going to give this nose. See that? Now, you notice it's uneven there. That's why I wanted to do this first before we cut the fender wells out. Now you see we've got that much more droop in it. And if you're wondering if that's much, if you'll look here, you'll see the stress that it's putting on the plastic when I do this side, well, both sides. You see that showing up there? And of course, if like the Talladega, we're going to put a little piece of sheet plastic on there that'll reinforce that, and we'll be super gluing that into a little patch up in there to hold that into place too. But check that out from the other side. See how much that drops it? Just that little bitty width of that saw, which by the way is, let me find my dial caliper, is only 0.2 millimeters, or 0.2 millimeters. So it is super thin. Actually, guys, that is thinner than a hobby knife is. And yet, as you can see, you get some absolutely great results as far as a lot of people want to cut a pie shape out of it so they can drop it down. You don't need to. If I wanted this drooped even more, I could have made a separate cut. It may be a different angle, maybe a little further up, but I don't think I'm going to need to, because what's going to happen is once this wheel well is opened, you're going to get an illusion of even more drop off. And I can't wait to show you that. But I mean, check that out. That's just from that little 2mm cut, that much more drop. I love doing this stuff, guys. Can you tell? But we'll get this glued up and a little putty up in the top part there. No big deal, just like we did with our Talladega. And you see how smooth that looks still? And we'll get that done, let this be drying, and then we will get over to cutting the wheel wells out. Stick around. Ran into just a touch of a problem when we were bending our fenders down. As you see here, I've got a patch, just a dot of super glue on either side, and this is easy to remove, guys. Just pop that off and then we'll sand it back down. And also did one on the inside, but I had a problem on the driver's side when I bent that over. When I applied the glue before I put the dot down, you see where this snapped right into, yes, even Hobby Dude has these issues, but it snapped right there. So we've got that glued back together, and I do have a patch on that as well on the inside. Now, by the way, these inside patches, those are going to be sanded away when it's all cured and when the fenders are cut out too. But these things, hey guys, they happen. And this has been drying for a couple of hours now, but I want to give this a couple of days because that's a weak spot there. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put some putty to make sure everything's smoothed out, and then we'll get that set to open up the wheel wells. And I'm going to wait and do the rear when I do the front, but I am going to give this a couple of days. Now, that drop off in the front, the hood, as you see, is fit nice and flush here, but just that little bitty cut, look at how much drop that is. And remember, that had to go that 25 millimeters back to right here, right about here on the hood is where it sloped over on the real car. So we've achieved that. So that's where we'll be making our heat, and we'll do that in the next video too. We'll be heating up right there and then making our bend. I'll show you how we're going to do that. That's going to accommodate that, but you see how much of a drop off that is there. And then we'll get into how we're going to do that cowl type scoop for the hood. But I want to get, this video is getting a little long, so I want to go ahead and end up right here. I wanted to go ahead and have these wheel wells cut out as well, but I'm going to wait for this to cure a couple extra days. There's no sense in rushing it. But I do want to share this with you. Remember that panel that was in this? We've gone ahead and cut that out. And then I took my sanding stick and we smoothed all of that out all the way around. So this really, the more I look at this after I've got that off of it, especially, I'm swaying more and more toward this, and I'm going to have to build in some spring buckets and things like that into it, which is fine, and new shock mounts and stuff like that. But I'm kind of liking the look of this, so I think I'm going to do that. And I've measured, and where our fuel cell is going to sit in here looks spot on, so I think we're going to be good there. Guys, that looks like that's about it for right now. Again, I'm going to set this up, let her dry, and we're going to get back on the phone booth here in a matter of about 10 minutes. So I'm going to be back on that, and I'll be starting a video on it too. Guys, God bless. I hope y'all have an awesome weekend, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.